What's going on, Summoners? Welcome back to another Pro Guides video. I'm Kangas, and today I'm going to be discussing the counter picks of the OP champs on patch 11.3. We're going to be going over runes, builds, and playstyles to effectively counter specific matchups. So the next time you run into one of these characters, you'll have the game knowledge and confidence to bully your opponents. So let's get into it.
Starting off with our top laners, we have Ornn into Darius. While Darius generally bullies all lanes, with tanks being particularly easy for him to beat up on, Ornn actually proves to be a pretty tough matchup. Your Q allows you to farm from a pretty safe distance and also provides a way to trade against Darius without getting too close. And with the slow it has, he'll struggle to even reach you to trade back. In the event that he does reach you, your W allows you to prevent him from pulling you in, as long as you time it well, while E lets you escape back towards your turret. The goal of the lane isn't to force kills onto Darius, obviously. If your jungler comes, the free kills are welcome, but your main goal is to farm up and just be more useful in teamfights with your loads of CC. On top of your teamfight strength, you also have the added bonus of your mastercraft items, ensuring that your teammates are much stronger than their counterparts on the enemy team. For items, you'll want to start Refillable Potion and immediately build a Doran Shield with your passive when you have the gold for it. Your mythic of choice will be Sunfire Aegis, and for boots, you'll want Plated Steel Caps. You'll round out your core with Thornmail, giving you some grievous wounds to cut on Darius's healing. While this 3-item core usually allows tanks to run over 80 bruisers, Darius is a bit of a special case. You can certainly trade with him, but in extended fights, he still has the upper hand. After that, you want to pick up Warmogs, giving you the ability to heal up between waves if your job ends up being to hold Darius down in the side lane, and the last two spots are flexible. But in general, aim for Abyssal Mask to boost your teammates' damage against targets that you ult, and then round out your build with either Randuin's Omen or Spirit Visage. Darius has been covered in our OP pick ban videos so many times, and honestly, I'm getting tired of it. He's been dominant as a top laner in solo queue for years now, and in the same time frame, he's only received a couple of very minor nerfs. And it's not like he's some sleeper pick either. He's been a contender for most ban champ the entire time. Alright, I might be getting ahead of myself, but at this point, it seems like Riot's being paid off to look the other way. And that brings us to today's question of the day. What champ do you think is just blatantly OP, but never gets nerfed? Obviously you know mine, I've done enough of these videos, but let me know your answers in the comments down below. Our next counter pick in top lane is Maokai into Malphite. Malphite excels against AD champs, able to wreck them both in and out of laning phase, but isn't so hot against magic-based opponents, especially somebody like Maokai. Maokai is much more capable of closing the gap and winning extended trades. And while Malphite is usually fine conceding lane since he's usually worth more than just his lane opponent in a teamfight, Maokai shines there too. He may not have the instant AoE engage Malphite does, but he easily makes up for it with his much better disruption in extended fights. With his super low cooldown brute and knockback, Maokai just does a little more than Malphite. In lane, you want to take advantage of your aforementioned ability to force fights as much as you can, at pretty much all stages. You're going to win trades due to your passive sustain. As for how to trade, you want to use your W to gap close on him when he moves up to Q you, dodging his spell in the process. Once you root him, walk behind him and Q him towards your side of the lane. You'll simply auto-win extended trades as long as you spam your Q on cooldown. For items, you'll start off Corrupting Potion and build into Sunfire Aegis as your mythic. Pick up Merc Treads and then work towards Spirit Visage. Once you have Visage done, you'll pretty much out-heal all the damage that he does to you during trades. After those 3 items, you can build whatever is needed for that particular game, with the generalist items being Thornmail, Abyssal Mask, and Warmog's Armor. Next up, let's talk about some jungle counters, but again, quick disclaimer, jungle can be largely influenced by lane priority, and this video is just assuming that neither laners are budging their lanes to come and decide the fight, just the straight up 1v1 of the junglers. We'll start off by looking at Skarner into Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix's strength lie more in his ability to get fed and make picks in the mid game, and when it comes time to teamfight, he's able to get right into the fight thanks to his multiple stealths, allowing him to constantly evade being caught out by his opponents. But with Skarner, you're just too tanky for Kha'Zix to tango with in a 1v1 situation. And when it comes time to teamfight, your point and click ultimate allows you to instantly lock him down the second he jumps in. This gives your team a chance to blow him up before he can even ult to get a reset. For items, you'll start off with Hailblade, and then build into Turbo Chem Tank as your mythic. After that, you'll just stack up the tank stats, becoming as unkillable as possible. You'll want Plated Steel Caps for boots unless the opposing team has enough CC to warrant Merc Treads. Then you'll build into Dead Man's Plate for more movement speed, and the rest of your build will be situational depending on what type of damage your opponents are putting out. You'll usually want to get Thornmail for even more armor and grievous wounds, and Force of Nature is a really good magic resist option since it gives you even more movement speed. Or you can just opt for Abyssal Mask with the damage amp being really helpful for your teammates to blow up that Kha'Zix when you ult him. If the enemy team has 2 or more crit champs, you should always consider picking up a Randuin's Omen. And the second jungle matchup we'll look at is Udyr into Hecarim. While Hecarim will outscale you if you allow him to, you'll make use of Udyr's incredibly fast clear speed to clear out your own jungle and then look to invade Hecarim constantly, taking away his camps for yourself. While Hecarim's E may make him fast, the cooldown is incredibly long early game, and you can literally run circles around him as you take his gold away. Since you'll be heavily invading in this matchup, he won't have camps to farm. His only option will be to look for ganks. If you can counter those too, he'll fall even further behind and be completely unable to find a way back into the game. In teamfights, Hecarim is usually a tough force to deal with, but if you play the early game right, with him being so behind, he'll end up being melted anytime he tries to go in. For items, you'll start Hailblade and build into Turbo Chem Tank for your mythic, following that with Boots of Swiftness unless you really need a tank boot option. Then build into Dead Man's Plate and Force of Nature for even more zoomies, Thorn Mail for grievous wounds, and then finish things off with the Abyssal Mask since you can constantly apply your stun to proc the passive. Like Skarner, this build is focused on being as much of a speedy, tanky nuisance as you can. But if you're super ahead, you could also pick up a Lichbane before Dead Man's Plate for a little more carry potential. Udyr is the least mechanical intensive character in the game since his entire kit is comprised of auto attacks. This means your success at shutting down Hecarim with him entirely comes down to things like pathing, decision making, and macro. Thankfully, these are some of the easier concepts to teach, so if you're interested in leveling up in those areas, head over to ProGuides.com where our challenger level coaches can help you save a ton of time learning those concepts, whether you need help at a basic level or a more advanced one. Now let's take a look at the mid lane counters. Our first matchup is taking Galio as a counter into Echo. One of Echo's key strengths is his ability to constantly shove waves and have the first move to skirmishes. But with Galio, you can easily match his pushing power, and even if you're a few seconds later than him on the first move, your ult allows you to reach the fight first and have a much bigger impact. During laning, you'll generally take the better end of trades thanks to your magic shield and aftershock, but the real strength of this counter isn't necessarily to force fights in lane. Instead, it's for your ability to shut him down in fights. Echo generally looks to dive past frontliners and jump onto squishy carries in the backline, but with Galio's huge taunt radius, you can completely prevent Echo from fighting the way he wants. In the event he does reach your backline, your ult's massive area coverage forces Echo to ult out of the fight, as being hit by it almost ensures he'll be chain CC'd to death. For items, you're going to want to start Doran's Ring and build into Rocket Belt as your mythic. For boots, you'll want Merc Treads to make it even harder for Echo to deal damage to you, and while you're more of an AP bruiser than a tank, you're still a frontliner, so you'll want Zonias to prevent yourself from being bursted after your aftershock runs out. After that, pick up Umbrella Namicon to cut down Echo's healing from his ultimate, and your last two slots are pretty flexible. If you want more damage, Rabadons and Void Staff are the obvious choices, but if your team is good in that department and you just want to be a better frontliner, you can pick up a Banshee's Veil and Demonic Embrace for a mix of damage and tank stats, or even just go full tank with items like Abyssal Mask and Gargoyle Stoneplate. Our second mid lane counter is Tristana into Anivia. Anivia is generally able to survive against the bursty all-in style of most mid laners due to her ability to disengage with her Q and W. In Tristana's case, your jump's relatively far range allows you to dive straight onto Anivia, and even if she stuns you with her Q, the slow from your W allows you to fully stack an explosive charge after, dealing a ton of damage. Once you have your ultimate, you have the damage to 100 to 0 Anivia. Even if she has her passive up, you should look to do this as soon as you can, since putting her egg on cooldown just means your next all-in should be that free kill. For items, start off with Doran's Blade and build that into Kraken Slayer for your mythic. Then you're going to pick up Berserker's Greaves. Your next item should be Storm Razor, since the slow makes it even easier to fully stack your explosive charge. After that, you'll want to pick up Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, and finish things off with Bloodthirster. Your high range, resetting jumps, and ult should all be enough to keep you safe, but if you really need Mercurial Scimitar, sub it in for the Phantom Dancer. And moving things down to the bot lane, we got another disclaimer. Bot lane carries are heavily influenced by supports, and you won't just be running at each other 1v1. These counters are more about how you win small trades and all-ins bot lane, assuming there isn't an overwhelming amount of support difference on either side. Our first bot lane counter is Seraphine into Jhin. This isn't the type of counter matchup where you want to look for all-ins. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. When Jhin moves up to take one of his powerful, bursty trades, you can easily disengage him with your EQ combo before he can even get in range. The idea here is to just neutralize his OP lane phase by going even, and then become much more useful in those later teamfights where Seraphine outscales pretty much every other champ in the game. With good positioning, you can even cancel Jin's ultimate with your own if you can extend its range enough. Rather than building damage, you'll be building a more supportive style to hard carry teamfights. Start off with Tyr, rush Lucidity Boots, and then pick up Moonstone Renewer as your obvious mythic item. After that, you're going to grab the classic Staff of Flowing Water to complete your Moonstaff core, and if you have any attack carries on your team, follow that up with an Ardent Censer. If there's no champs that would benefit from Ardent, instead you can actually go for a Mejai's. Or if there's a lot of assassins and you have a good chance of dying and losing your stacks, you can pick up a Zhonya's Hourglass or Banshee's Veil instead. The last 2 slots go to Archangel's Staff and Rabadon's Deathcap. Our second bot lane matchup is Swain into Kai'Sa. Your E outranges her relatively short autos and Qs, so you can constantly apply pressure, threatening to take trades anytime she walks up the farm. If Kai'Sa is the one looking to be aggressive, you win out in short bursty trades early on, and after 6, your ult gives you the upper hand in the extended trades too. And this isn't just a lane phase counter. Your damage rivals and maybe even exceeds that of hypercarry AD carries in teamfights, as long as you're fighting around your ultimate cooldown. For items, you'll start Dorn's Ring, and on one of your early recalls, pick up Tear of the Goddess. Build into Liandry's for your Mythic, and then pick up Sorc Shoes and Zhonya's Hourglass. A common mistake Swain players make is opting for Archangels as their second completed item, which can be fine in 2v2 and 3v3 skirmishes, but when it's time to take full 5v5 teamfights, you'll be melted. Build Demonic Embrace as your third completed item, and then pick up that Archangel Staff. Top off your build with a Rabadon's Deathcap. Now, we're taking a look at supports. Just like bot lane carries, supports rarely fight 1v1. This is more about how your kit counters what the other support is trying to do. Our first pick is my favorite champion, Bard into Leona. While some people actually see Leona as a good pick into Bard, if you know what you're doing with him, Bard actually wins this lane pretty easily. You can handily disengage Leona when she moves forward to use E by throwing out a Q before she gets in range. Even if she flashes in to force a fight, you can turn your peeling efforts to her AD carry instead, using your Qs and auto attack to hinder them. On top of that, your W's movement speed and ability to proc Guardian can help your AD carry retreat back to your tower. Both in lane and out of it, you can also use your ult to prevent Leona from making catches. While you can't stop her from ulting your allies, you can ult her teammates to prevent them from following up on the engage. For items, you'll start Spellthief's Edge to give some extra poke and help discourage Leona from going in. Instead of the standard Moby Boots or Boots of Swiftness, you'll be rushing Lucidity Boots. And instead of Imperial Mandate, you'll actually be going Locket of the Eye and Solari. That's right, this is Good Guy Bard. Both of these change-ups to Bard's core build have happened as people focus on his teamfight utility over his roaming strength. For that reason, you'll also be picking up Staff of Flowing Water, because that item is just too good to pass up on champs that can proc it. All that said, you'll still be picking up Dead Man's Plate, just as a later slot in the build. Your last slot can be used for redemption, but reserve that slot for pink wards until you can buy the completed item. And to round out our list, we have Blitzcrank as a counter to Lulu. For pretty much all of League's history, Blitz has just been the go-to counter pick when dealing with Enchanter supports. They lack the tankiness to block the hook and counter-engage in a way that a tank support like Leona or Nautilus would. On top of that, they're usually immobile, meaning the Enchanters themselves can't do anything other than bob, weave, and pray that Blitzcrank's hook goes wide. While Lulu's Q and W usually help her with disengaging all-in attempts from most supports, since Blitz pulls a target into him from a relatively far range, she can't do much to stop him. It's all in all a pretty unplayable lane for Lulu if Blitz is paired with an aggressive AD carry. For items, start off with Steel Shoulder Guards and Zeke's Convergence instead of a mythic item first. This gives your carry the best chance of killing a hooked target. After that, pick up Moby Boots so you can zoom across the map, and then pick up Shirelia's Battle Song as your mythic. Follow that with Knight's Vow and Abyssal Mask if the game goes long enough.
And that concludes our latest episode of Counter Picks. Really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you do, make sure to sub to the channel so you never miss out on our meta guides and you're always in the loop on what the best picks are. Remember to let us know what champ is blatantly OP but never gets nerfed in the comments down below. And one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description box below where you can discuss League further or just hang out and be part of our community. Can't wait to see you back in the next video, but until then, as always, best of luck on the Rift. Stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next one.